Right, welcome everyone to Fazlif's podcast, episode 26. Awesome to have Alex from Team Metal Team Metal Athletics back on with me for the fourth time. How you doing, Alex? You well?
I'm good. I just realized I'm like 1 in 6 of your podcasts are me.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so it's the fourth time. That's right. So, but yeah, they've all been really good. We've had some good feedback, and I actually had a message just saying that they were looking forward to having you back on because we have a good back and forth. So that's nice. Right.
Awesome.
Yeah. So we will start with the first question. The topic of today's podcast is going to be to do with the pros and cons, the perks and the negatives of coaching in general. And we're going to be discussing what it's like to be a coach, some of the trials and tribulations we have. Okay. So first question is, do you have a typical starting point for intake of new clients?
Yeah, I do actually. I have an intake form that's pretty generic, but it's pointed towards getting specific information from people that I can kind of, extrapolate out and get more from. But there's I don't know how many questions it is. I'd say it's 15 to 20 questions that look something like your statistics, your background in health, any medications that you're on, your dietary likes and dislikes, dietary issues, intolerances, allergies, and then it starts focusing on goals. And from there, I typically go back and forth with them trying to figure out more about their goals. That's really where I'm at in the beginning, is I want to figure out how serious they are and if they really actually have goals or if they're just like spinning their wheels and don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm. How specific are you when it comes to goals? Because this is something that sort of bit me in the butt in the past. What are you looking for? Are you looking for hard numbers, or are you looking for just like a goal to compete next year?
It's nothing really about numbers. It's more, I want to see what their mindset is. And so I'll take people that are everywhere from weight loss to general health to competition, and their goals should be pretty vastly different if they're a weight loss client versus a competitive client. Although the process of getting them there it's going to overlap quite a bit with those two types of people. You're going to see similarities in a protocol, but the mindset's really important, and figuring out if somebody is going to be better with a more robotic, straightforward plan, or if they're going to need more massaging or more flexibility. Right from the beginning, I want to see I hesitate to call it how serious they are, but it's more kind of how desperate they are at that point. Like how badly do they really want to do what they say they want to do? Because let's face it, reaching a difficult goal is not going to be easy, and there's likely going to be an inflection point pretty early on where you're like, this is work. It goes beyond, it's just a good plan, it's easy, to having to make a commitment to making it work. And so that's what I'm looking for, is I'm really trying to figure out if they have the mindset to commit to something.
Yeah. I went for a much more specific route just because I have been bitten with general ones in the past. I had a client recently who said he wanted to be the best version of himself. And I kind of know what that means to me, and I know the kind of effort level it requires, but I think the reality hit quite hard in terms of what he needed to do. And he didn't last very long. So
that sounds like a very individual question, right? Like a very generic answer.
Yeah.
It could mean best version of myself could be like not very good.
Right. Yeah. You could have very low goals.
Right.
Yeah. So that ended up, I think, biting me in the butt because he just wasn't able to really stick to even a basic training schedule, which was quite disappointing in the end. But
right.
I think ultimately, the idea of being the best he could be probably sounded better than the reality of where it took to get there.
Yeah, he saw it pinned on an Instagram post and then saw your text and said, I'm going to reach out to this dude.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's as we know, it's not that easy. But, so in terms of your back and forths, what are we looking at? Sort of 3 or 4 emails back and forth? How much time are you spending on this type of a consultation?
Anything from a few quick discussions to a pretty much like a longer back and forth. Like if somebody is if somebody says right off the bat, I want to become a pro bodybuilder, you're going to have a long discussion with them because first of all, you want to figure out if they're capable of it, physically capable of it. And I'll give them a very honest, not necessarily accurate, because who knows if somebody is really capable of it, but it's my honest interpretation of what they could, how quickly they could do it, if they could do it, how competitive they'd be at the top. And we really don't know all of that until somebody gets going. But there are people that clearly don't have it, and it's in everybody's best interest to point that out right away. So those things can take back and forth quite a bit. For somebody that's just looking for weight loss or looking for like a non-specific deadline and wants to be healthier, maybe they've had health issues, things like that, it can be fairly quick back and forth. What I try not to do is give specifics of what I intend to do with them without diving in deeper into what they have done. So a lot of people want to know what type of plan do you do? What type of diet do you like to do? What type of, how do you train? How do you do this? What would you do if this happened, if that happened? And I consider that to be off limits questions before we actually dive into what they've been doing for quite a while. So the initial consultation is really just to make sure they're healthy, or if they're not healthy, get them to the doctor immediately to figure out how to handle it, because some people they don't go. And from there, figure out if they're viable for me. So if we're going to be a partnership, if it's going to work.
Just one more question on that. Just a practical question. Are you taking payment before you do this consultation or afterwards? Because when I first started, I was doing my consultations prior, and I ended up wasting a lot of time with time wasters, spending a lot of time with back and forth, and ultimately just it not going anywhere. What are your thoughts on that?
What I typically do is I'll send the intake form. I'll make sure they fill it out in completion. I want details. So if they send it back and it's half-assed, I ask them for more details. And as soon as they've truly filled out the form, fleshed out their diet, you'll say diet, and some people will write a sentence. I eat 3 meals a day. Here's what it is. And it's like eggs in the morning, this and that. There's no amounts, right? There's nothing.
Yeah.
So I tell those people to take pictures of their meals for 3 days and send them to me, what they eat for 3 days, every single thing they put in their mouth. And they're like, most people are like, what? That's what I ask them to do. And this is before I take any payment. I just want to know what they're doing. And I want them to commit to at least, giving me the information before we talk about actually working together. As soon as they do that, I'll give them my terms and my payment, which are on my website as well, although they've changed a little bit recently. I need to get that changed on the site. But anyway, it's I give them my terms right away. And I would say 90% of the time, they'll just pay then. They'll choose one of the terms and pay then, and we can. And I won't start billing them until they have their plan in their hands. So there could be a back and forth of 3 or 4 days to a week before they actually have the plan. That's when their terms start.
I do the same thing in that respect as well. But I typically take payment before, just because I've had quite a few consultations. I think this is kind of where you and I differ in terms of our intake as well. I tend to get a lot more casual, non-competitors.
I get all of it. Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I don't want to take anyone's payment that I'm going to send back.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people, and I'm not going to say a lot, but maybe 20% of the people I either refer them to another coach, or I suggest that possibly they don't need coaching.
Yeah.
The rest of them typically have already, a lot of people, when they reached out to you, they've already pretty much decided they're going to go with you. For whatever reason. They might have a good reason, they might not. Maybe it's a referral, maybe it's they've been watching you, whatever it is. But most of them, I would say, seem to have already made up their mind and are ready to pay. But I'm just feeling them out initially.
Yeah.
And then some of them, I'm like, okay, well, why don't you go see, like I've sent people to Chris Tuttle. Chris is extremely methodical and very kind of robotic with his plans. And some people are very suited for that. And so I've sent people to John Irizarry because they're vegan or they're interested in other things. And I thought he was a better fit. I've sent people to other coaches just because I think they're a better fit, or because frankly, I'm not sure I'm a good fit. And then some people I ask point blank, why are you seeking out a coach? it doesn't seem like you really actually need one.
Yeah.
And that'll happen. But that's 20, maybe 25% of the people that reach out. And then the rest of them, I feel like they've already really decided.
Yeah. That's great. So moving on to the next question, and kind of on the back of that, once you have established a starting point and you're happy that you want to work with this client, do you vet the new clients? Do you ask for references, etc.? What are you looking for?
I don't specifically ask for references from them, but I do often reach out to people they know that are mutual if I know anybody, and I'll just ask them for like a brief opinion on whether or not they're a good candidate for coaching. If they knew that they were looking at me, and if why they thought that was, just general, like, does this person stick to their goals? What's their personality like? Stuff like that. I'll have a short conversation with people that are maybe mutual friends. But really what I'm doing to vet clients is to challenge them to give me as much information as they can. That's kind of my process. Is if somebody, like some people will send me, I had a guy maybe 2 months ago, sent me an Excel spreadsheet of everything he'd eaten in the last 3 months.
Nice.
And it was to the gram. And I looked at it and go, okay, well, you're doing that even better than I would do it. So I think we're fine there, and he was already like, supplements down to the pill and everything. It was all, by the day in this Excel spreadsheet. So he was already well programmed. For him, it was just a matter of kind of oversight and maybe changing some of the dietary principles. Like we actually went to keto from a carb cycling diet, and he dropped about 12 pounds of fat in about 2 months. So he's pretty much ready. I mean, he's not competing, but he's pretty much ready if he wanted to compete in the next 6 weeks, if we wanted to do that. But yeah, so a guy like that, as soon as he sent that, I knew he was good.
Yeah.
A lot of people, they'll fill out the form and it's barely even filled in. And so some of those people I'm looking for, because what's going to happen is 2 or 3 weeks in, a month in, we should have 8 check-ins by a month in, and I'll have 2 from some of those people.
It's frustrating. Yeah.
Well, there's just no point in having me there.
Yeah.
It's not useful. I'm not useful to them. Why are they paying money? So I want to circumvent that. I'm not just trying to grab people's, couple $100.
Yeah, I tend to find that's ultimately more frustrating, more tiring for me when I have those type of clients.
Yeah, that's it. Like,
yeah,
for me to write a first plan, I spend a lot of time on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it might look like it's simple to do, and like I'm just kind of winging it, but it's nothing like that. It takes me several days to do. So the initial first month that I'm doing with somebody, I'm not really making the profit level that I'd want to. So if they're gone in a month, it's a break-even proposition.
Yeah, 100% agree. There's a lot of time and effort. I know that I know that 3DMJ, the Eric Helms crew, they actually charge a lot more in the first month for basically for that reason.
Yeah, I've thought about doing that. What I typically do is I'll here she comes. My daughter's waking up. I see her like peeking around the corner. What I'll typically do is sorry. I lost my train of thought. You were saying they take more in the first couple months.
Yeah, 3DMJ, yeah.
I ask for 3 months. I do a 3-month term. Okay. You can use the iPad, but I need to be in here alone. Can you go in the other room? Can you go over there? I'll go over there. You stay here. So I'll take like a 3-month term to start, and if they disappear in a month, that's on them.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to the next question. This is something that I find I'm going to talk about a little bit because I find it probably one of the more frustrating parts of my job. Despite my reputation in my hometown, I actually don't take on that many competitors. I have a lot of non-competitive clients, and a large part of my job is trying to figure out the psychology of their eating and why they're not following the plan. And that's really a large part of some of the clients that I work with, and trying to figure out how they can stick to a plan, how they can actually stick to that plan accurately. And, it may seem, very sort of, it may seem sort of very obvious for coaches, for people like you and I who are used to all the macro approach, but trying to basically explain to them how to do an eating approach, whether that's a meal plan or whether that's a macro plan. So a lot of my clients, I struggle with them not following the plan. And that's a lot of my biggest issues, particularly with my Gen Pop clients. So with my clients like, well, obviously your ex-client, Jason, and one of my clients recently, Kat, I know for a fact they're following the plan to a T. And when they do that, it becomes a very gratifying job for me because I can see the results of my actions, quite straightforward. But with a lot of my clients who are Gen Pop, it really is a case of initially just getting the numbers right because I can see straight away that what's being said is being eaten. Like, okay, I've been eating 1,200 calories every day and I've lost, like, I don't know, 0.1 of a kilo. It's not true. It's not going to happen. So there's a lot who just don't understand how to do that, or just don't follow the plan, or just don't write things down. That becomes more of my job than actually creating changes and actually doing seeing the result of what I do. So the next question for you is, how many clients do you believe don't follow the plan?
More than half. So I couldn't tell you exactly, but here's my breakdown. I've got a handful of people who absolutely follow the plan, and it's very obvious. Typically, they're the ones that'll call me or text me to tell me they've eaten like 30 extra grams of carbs. Something almost meaningless in the grand scheme, and they're going to tell me about it. Not beat themselves up, but just be like, hey, I went over, or I went hypo or whatever, and I had to have this, and and then we'll discuss it. And a lot of times those guys are checking in quite a bit too. So you're getting like constant pictures, constant, every 3 days, 4 days. I tell people they can check in as often as they want. Just text me when you check in. I have a forum. So I've got years of data on some people where they can check in, keep training logs, keep food logs, keep everything on their own page, and just ping me and say, there's new pictures up, take a look. So if you want to have constant supervision, you can have that. And the people that I find that look for 2-3 times a week, they're following the plan because they're telling you everything they're doing. You're seeing everything everywhere, and they're telling you, I ate a burger, I ate this, I ate that, but you can see that it's just a burger. It's not a burger here and then some, Doritos and then some other things, and then, a croissant in the morning, and it's not, and then I skipped a meal, so then I had this instead, or I ate extra, so I did extra cardio, but didn't tell you about it, all that stuff. So I'd say more than half of the people that I find are not checking in constantly, and, the check-ins from one to the next don't look very different.
Yeah.
It's pretty much like, hey, I'm status quo, I'm at this weight. People will eat to their body will eat to maintain what they're at. I mean, I know it for a fact because I've been doing it for years.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
I haven't been tracking what I've been doing, and only when I really push, I'll lose any weight. And then when I don't for a while, I'll just stay where I am, and then if I get real sloppy, I'll gain weight. But usually most of the time I'm just homeostasis.
Well, that's the sort of the concept of having a settling point. It's more related to psychological desires and activity levels than it is to anything else.
It has everything to do with the psychological desires. It has everything to do with that. Because you can push for 3 or 4 days and you make some progress, and then it hurts, and your body tells you, make that stop hurting. So that might just be like, don't do the cardio, or don't be as active, or it might be like, eat something more, or hey, just add a few carbs to this meal and this meal and this meal, and then that's just every meal. So a lot of my job, like yours, is to figure out what type of plan, whether it should be flexible or inflexible, is going to make them most capable of following. So some people, they don't want options. They don't want to know that you can have, you can sub chicken with turkey, with shellfish, with whitefish, with egg whites. They don't want to know that at all. They just want you to tell them which one to eat, how much of it, and they're good. And so I have guys like that, and one girl who I've had for years who just get mad if I give them options. Like they'll call me and say, I'm going out to eat. What should I get? Here's the menu, and I'll just pick off the menu for them.
Just off that sort of, do you see it as your job to teach them how to be more flexible over the course of a range of years, or are you happy just to go with that restrictive approach? And that's quite a big question.
For that type of person, I think they have anxiety that's related to it.
Mhm.
I don't think it's a matter of education. I think it's a matter of comfort.
Mm.
And so like an OCD person is, or I'm not diagnosing, but somebody that has those, those leanings will feel more comfortable just knowing what they should be getting. For the other, large population of people who do want to be more flexible or need to be more flexible, I think it's impossible to work with me and not know how to do that after a period of time. Because it's pretty straightforward. I'll list like meal one, here's your macros and here's your food options, protein, fat, and carbs. And I tell people they have to figure out for themselves how many grams of, oats it's going to take to get 40 grams of carbs.
Yeah.
If they're going to choose bread over oats, then they need to choose these breads, and you have to figure out for yourself how much it is. And then if they're not making progress, I want pictures of the food because I want to see that they're measuring properly. I can look at a bowl of oats and tell you if it's, a cup and a half or if it's 3/4 of a cup.
Yeah.
So, and if I'm going to pour a bowl of oats and not measure, it's going to be a cup and a half.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the clearest things from the research is that there is a large amount of underreporting of food. I had a client who worked with me for a little while, and she swore blind she was eating only 800 calories. Once I taught her to do the macros and calories and things, she swore blind she was eating only 800 calories per day.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, she actually gained weight that week, so it's physiologically impossible. Now, what she was actually doing was she was writing down her calories at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Now, so I got her to get a phone out every single time she was eating something, put that into MyFitnessPal. Turns out she's eating 2,400 calories per day. So it was quite amazing.
That's quite a span.
It's quite a discrepancy, yeah. But I find so a question to you is regarding underreporting. How many of your clients are coming through and you're having to basically teach them from the ground up? Because I get a lot of those.
Not a ton.
Yeah.
I mean, not the majority.
I thought so. Yeah. Yeah.
Not the majority. I think the majority of people who come to me, I would say half of them have competed.
Mm-hmm.
So they've had some interaction with this. The other half have not, and then out of those half of those don't want to.
Yeah, I think this is.
So there's.
Sorry,
I'm heavily weighted towards because I came off the forums mostly when I started, and a lot of the people on there wanted to compete or were competing. So that's where I was, gleaning clients, and then I was getting referrals from those people to other people who were like them. So I was, I'm not in a gym setting. I don't set up an office in a gym anywhere. I pretty much train like a stealth mode by myself at odd hours at gyms where they give me keys. And so, I just go when I'm not going to see many people usually. Yeah. And I'm not sitting around trying to get clients at gyms. A lot of them know who I am. Maybe a lot of them don't. I'm not really sure. I never really set out to have local clients. That was a major thing in the beginning when I started 8 or 9 years ago. It was not a goal of mine to have local clients. That's going to change next year. As I was telling you, I'm going to have a store, and it's going to be attached to a gym that we're partnering in. So there's going to be a lot more face-to-face stuff with me going forward. But to this point, I wouldn't say I've avoided it, but I didn't advertise that I was there. So the people coming to me who were just weight loss people probably saw my Instagram, saw some of my weight loss clients, and maybe they saw me on the forums and they, but usually it's not the case. So as far as bringing people up to speed on like how to measure and deal with food, almost never.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest differences between your clientele and mine. That tends to be the majority of the people I get coming through. So they've seen somebody do a great transformation based off of that, and it's a friend, it's a coworker, for example, and they come to me with really pretty much zero effective experience with doing macros and that kind of stuff. So that tends to be, this is what I was saying earlier, that tends to be a large part of my job, is to get them to the point where they're understanding exactly what they're eating. So I think
I'll tell you what I'm going to do is, because when I open that store, I am going to get a lot more of that. And I've already thought it through. And what I'm going to do is have classes for like beginners, intermediates, where like food prep classes. And I'm going to literally like make a week's worth of meals and show them how to do it, how to measure it, how to deal with different types of foods, what kind of options, stuff like that. So I'll charge for the class. I don't know what, but people can come and sit down and learn how to food prep, because it's like square one. You have to learn how to do it.
Absolutely. The way I do that is through my Instagram. So I have, at the moment, I'm up to 3 meal prep series where I take people from literally the supermarket to the final product. They can see that for free on my Instagram. But yeah, it's still definitely one of the ones that I tend to spend a lot of time on. But in any case, let's go on to the next question. How do you deal with miscommunication or no communication?
So miscommunication would be like omitting information or lying about it.
Yeah.
And no communication is obviously no contact, off plan probably, and no word about it, or complete ghosting and then showing back up saying, yeah, sorry, I ghosted you. I had one of those today. It was, sorry, I ghosted you. I'm in the middle of a divorce, this and that. And we started like 6 weeks ago. So I was like, no, I get it. It's no problem. So it's individual by individual. What I typically do is I remind them of what they told me their goals was.
Yeah.
That's number one. I remind them, you told me you wanted to do this and this. Is that still the case? Or have your goals changed? And so if their goals have changed, if the goalpost has changed, I no longer want to compete. I just want to be healthy. Then I ask them, do you think you still require coaching? And they might be like, yes, I want to be tight still on this, or no, I'm not really sure, or what wishy-washy. I got a bunch of vacations coming up. I'm not sure what I want to do. What I'll usually do for those people is I'll offer to suspend their terms until they're ready. So, we're halfway into their terms. I'm not going to refund them just because they decided not to do it, but I will suspend it until they're ready and they can come back and rededicate themselves at any point. But I think a lot of it is reminding people that they came to you, that they said they wanted to do this, and then just making sure that that's what they still want to do. And then the second half of it is kind of reinforcing that you can't do anything for them effectively if they're not communicative. So it's a struggle with some people always.
Yep.
Always. And a lot of times they'll reach back out and say, yeah, I've been completely on plan. Everything's great. And they lost like a few pounds or they look tighter and you're like, wow, you really have. Why wouldn't you just throw up an update? So I just stress to people that it's really hard to do the job if you're not having consistent contact. I tell everybody in prep that I'm just going to crawl up their ass because there's nowhere that I'm going to be able to do my job other than like waking up to a text from me, basically. More or less every few days, it's like, okay, do this for 2 days, send me pictures, let's talk in the morning, and that's pretty much what we're doing the whole entire prep. So there's no real like guideline, like, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Monday, Sunday, Monday to Monday, whatever, like in terms of check-ins. It's really just manipulating what they need and checking in as often as I think I need to see something. But the no communication thing is the hardest one. And it's actually really common after shows. It's really strange. It's like the week before the show, they're talking all about their goals, everything they want to do, what's going to happen next, how excited they are about it, everything. Right. And then the show happens and it's like nothing. You can win the show. You could lose the show. It almost doesn't matter. I have to figure out a way to do this better, actually, because like maybe I should offer some sort of a post-show package. I don't know, where it's like, okay, you're getting this, and this type of support. Here's what you can expect. I usually try to talk to people about it, but I haven't really dealt with that. And a lot of people just kind of disappear. They do a month or 2, 3 months, and then they show back up. And then some people never do show back up, and like maybe they didn't like something about the experience, and it would be better for me if I got kind of an exit interview from that. Of course,
yeah.
And I haven't done that. So I think the toughest part of no communication is for me is post-show. I'm also like super invested. People don't realize how invested I am, and like in their results, and not just their results, but like where they're going to go next, what's going to happen next for them. And it's like, it's really hard for me to be to back off and just be like, okay, well, enjoy your week,
Yep. sort of just to interject with my experience on this, I think this is another one of the sort of more frustrating parts of the job for me, because I'm not as experienced as a coach as you are, but so I see every new client as a learning opportunity for myself as well. So I
Yeah.
have a plan for people, and I want to see the plan through, and then I want to be able to evaluate and kind of move on it and sort of learn from that myself, because I
Yeah.
believe if I can work with a wider range of people, it kind of helps me. So I've had sort of no communications before and then just trailing off into nothing. And for me, that is, I don't think people kind of realize just how invested you do become with them and sort of what a plan you've got. For each of my clients, I have a rough idea in my head of where I want them to be a year from now, 6 months from now, because I have my notes on them. And I don't think people really get the fact that your coach isn't there just week to week. Like if you have a good coach who cares about you, they really want to see you as a final product, and they have not an exact idea how to get there, because that always depends, week to week, month to month, but they have a rough idea of how they want to get you there. And I think there's this sort of, this idea that, well, if we just cut communication, I'll just carry on with my life. But there's actually quite a lot that goes into it. So it is a shame when clients choose to just break off communication and then just that's it, you get nothing from them. It would
I
be
think a lot
nice.
of it is fatigue.
Hmm.
I think a lot of it is fatigue. It's like not just physical, but like an emotional fatigue.
Hmm.
And possibly a coach represents all the hard work and everything they put into it, and they're fatigued from that work, and they're just like, I'm going to push away from that for a minute.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I felt like it was in the past. But you're right. It becomes a kind of a personal moment for the coach where he's like, did I handle it right?
Yeah.
So that's definitely the case.
I think even if people want to leave as well, I think just a general, thanks, coach, this was good, goodbye kind of thing. But I had one client last year who we were discussing, and there's something to do with his data, and he wasn't logging correctly. So it wasn't really matching up. And Alex, you've seen this before. If the data doesn't match with what the body weight's doing, something's the matter. And we got to that point where we were kind of discussing this and fleshing this out. And it was clearly he was doing something wrong or not reporting something. Turns out he wasn't reporting something. But in his case, rather than fatigue, I think it was just embarrassment. So it came out he was doing something he wasn't supposed to be doing. He wasn't really reporting it, and then done. Zero. No contact from text, nothing on Instagram, and just gone. Never heard from the guy again. And I thought that was massively disappointing, because he was talking the talk of somebody who wanted to compete. He just couldn't get his shit together. And in the end, I think it's probably embarrassment.
Yeah, it could be the case. I have a funny story about that, actually. One of my clients who ended up winning an overall this year and winning a class last year. He was like pretty good bodybuilder. Through his first prep, he was halfway into the prep, and the coach figured out that he was drinking grape juice daily, like at all his meals. And the guy didn't realize, like, he was like, I don't know, is grape juice bad? And
Well, it's bad if it's not on the plan.
they pulled the grape juice out, and like abracadabra, got super tight.
Yeah.
But I just thought it was funny because it was kind of like a miscommunication, off plan, type of thing. But that one was dealt with well. I mean, it wasn't like, imagine you tell them, oh, you can't drink that, and they get embarrassed and then they don't talk to you.
I had one when I was first starting off, actually, and he decided he wanted a meal plan. Despite my recommendations, he really wanted a meal plan, so I gave him a meal plan, and his weight was flying up, like really, really fast, like a kilo a week.
Yeah.
I said to him, "Are you sure you're eating the meal plan?" He said, "Yep, I'm definitely eating the meal plan." And so next week his weight flew up another kilo, and I was like, "Dude, are you eating the meal plan?" He's like, "Yeah." I said, "Are you eating anything else?" And he said, "Well, I end the night with chocolates and I have some beer on the weekend, but yeah, I'm eating the meal plan." Like, holy shit, that's not the so he's eating the plan, he's just eating a whole bunch of stuff on top of it as well. So right, we got to the bottom of that. But okay, so let's move on to the next question. Is it harder to coach someone who competes or doesn't? This will be interesting to get your answer on this, based on what we were talking about earlier with potentially the difference with my clients and yours. So it'd be interesting to hear your opinion on this.
Yeah. This is a tough one. It's harder to coach somebody who doesn't compete, and only because they don't have the absolute petrifying thought of being in their underwear on stage to keep them up.
Yes, true. Yeah.
But other than that, everything that goes into prepping somebody is much more work. It's a lot more time intensive and much more work, but it's not actually harder to get results. It's easier to get results because they're locked in. Mm. With the minority of people who are not locked in and end up quitting, which is, I don't know, 20 to 30% of the people. And, you know, not necessarily quitting, but dropping out of that show can fall under quitting. But some of them just flat out quit. Some of them just flat out continually. So this is where it's hard. This is the hard people who compete. The ones who will hit you up and say, can I get in shape in this much time? Mm-hmm. Can I do it? And you go, yes, you have no room for error, but yes, you can do it. It can be done. And they go, okay, I'll do anything it takes. Let's do it. And then before you know it, it's, hey, there's a road trip with the boys. How do I prepare for it?
Yeah.
And you go, I don't care. What I should say and what I'm going to start saying is, don't even tell me about your road trip with the boys. I don't want to know about it. Just follow the plan. If you cannot follow the plan when you're on a road trip with the boys, don't go.
Yep.
Okay.
Simple. Yeah.
Don't pay me hundreds of dollars to prep you and then decide that maybe there's another way you can do this. Just do it. I got guys that are on the road every weekend, 4 days a week, who prep their foods and never say anything about it. They're in a hotel half the time, and we don't even talk about it because that's their lifestyle. That's what they do. Yeah. So it's not even worth mentioning. You're saying you want to go on vacation, you want to go to concerts, you want to go to this, you want to go to Bali, you want to go to Disney World. Okay, I don't care. Like, that's awesome. Go. And also eat your chicken meal, you know? Otherwise, don't compete. And so a lot of those people, they have this fantasy that they're going to be able to juggle a really enriched lifestyle with lots of, you know, interesting things happening, with the idea that they're going to be starving and eating prosaic food. You know?
And you're going to be the one who's going to tell them how to do that as well.
How am I going to do that?
Yeah, that's the idea. Yeah.
So those are impossible. That's an impossible client. But the vast majority of people who don't get results are the ones who don't competing because they're more likely to indulge in food. That's just the basic. They might train really, really hard, you know, and they might make substantive improvements in muscle quality, muscle density, but they're never going to get really, really ripped and really get in shape unless they decide they're going to diet like that. And how many people are going to diet like that if they're not competing? Yeah, there's a few, but there's not many. So I'm going to go with off-season clients are harder to get results from, but contest prep clients are a lot more work.
Yeah. I'll give you sort of my thoughts on that with the few people that I've coached to compete. In general, with the clients who don't compete, again, a lot of them being essentially from the ground up, I'm having to teach them how to do meal planning, I teach them how to do the macros, teach them how to do everything. That can tend to be quite challenging, mainly because you end up with always this underreporting issue again. And a lot of them are fat loss clients because in general, people, they don't move as much as they should and they eat more than they think they are. And so getting them to sort of appreciate that becomes very, very difficult. And that ends up being quite a difficult conversation because if you can imagine, you have, you know, a woman, a guy saying to you, hey, I'm eating, you know, 1,300 calories a day. I'm not losing any weight. I'm trying as hard as I can. And they fully believe they're trying as hard as they can. And you have to say to them, turn around and go, look, you're not eating that much. You're probably eating 2,500 calories. I find for myself that can be quite a draining conversation. Like I find personally that can be quite draining because you're having to tell. You're not telling them.
I'm more blunt than you. I'm more blunt in those situations. I'm like, I just blurt out, "That's impossible."
Yeah.
You know, because it is. We all know it is. Anyone that does this knows it's impossible. What I tell them to do is to get a Fitbit or an Apple Watch and track their steps, track all their steps, and send me the log. And invariably, they're doing 6,000 to 8,000 steps max. And then I'm like, okay, getting them to track food is more difficult. So I just tell them to start sending pictures of meals. Now, granted, they could eat other stuff that's not in the pictures of the meals, but then they know they're lying.
Well, this is the thing. This is where I think our clients sort of differ a little bit. Like I get a lot more of that and that becomes quite draining. I'm quite happy to be blunt. People who know me in person know I'm a very blunt person. But then it's a case of you teach them how to do it. You can even show them to how to do meal prep. They'll do meal prep for a week. Then they'll be like, okay, I got this. Go back to eating what they think is like 600 calories a day and still hardly losing any weight. And you're like, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah,
That was just
we're
a
not
waste.
going to work together very long.
That was just a waste of my week.
Yeah.
And that then becomes quite draining because you're like, look, we went through this. I think a lot of these people have two different switches. They can either eat like they always have, like shit, or they can eat to a plan. At least in the initial stages, they don't actually have the ability to be flexible, and that's starting to come to light with me now in terms of the people I coach.
I see. So you're saying like they're not going to be flexible within the plan. They're either going to be on the plan or they're going to be wildly off of it.
Yeah, I think they only have two switches. It's a case of I'm going to eat like I always have, or I'm going to be completely on this exact prescriptive approach. So I've actually had to change my opinion on this over the years, Alex, because I never used to want to give out meal plans, but I've ended up giving out more and more precisely for this reason, because of the types of clients that I get to come through. They only really know one way of eating, which is eating like shit. They don't actually have even so much as I have clients coming to me who have no meal schedule at all. It's a case of I'm going to snack all day, have a meal at night, and that's my schedule,
Yeah.
So for them, they need an actual meal plan. So I've had to change my mind on that over the years. And at least in the initial stages, it gives them the beginnings of something they can then work with as it moves.
Right. Yeah. I think I'll stick to my answer just because I'm not going to last very long with any of those people. It's just not. It's not going to work.
Yeah. They can be taxing, but I think when we get it right, and I have got it right with quite a few of them, they see it long term, and you're on their case. It's quite gratifying to get the results.
Yeah, I believe it for sure.
Yeah. All right, good. Let's move on to the next one. So this is an interesting one. What's harder, off-season or contest prep coaching? I think the reason I find this interesting, I just want to preface this, is because you'll probably find, like I do, a lot of people will come to you for the contest prep. They won't do the off season with you. With the assumption that off season is going to be easy. So it'd be nice to hear your opinion on this.
It's much harder to make impressive off season gains after you've done a couple of shows and you're intermediate. Much harder. So you're going to see a lot of it. You see guys, actually, right now I have a couple people that I've seen prepping that I'm not prepping, and I didn't prep them for their last off season, but I did for a couple seasons before, where they went from 100 and like lightweight, middleweight range into the light heavyweight range, and went to the top of the class in that area, but then just stayed there and then left, got really heavy, and then came back into the show looking no different or no better necessarily than they were in the past. And I think part of that is programming in the off season and how difficult it can be to do right when you're at that stage. I think when you're in a beginner stage, off season's really easy.
Yeah,
you can do a lot of things right by eating a lot of food and training really hard. Okay, you can really, and then the next kind of intermediate stage before you get into like the expert intermediate, you can kind of pick out body parts that need work and fine tune the diet and still stay in that eating a ton of food and training really hard phase and make improvements. But then when you get past that and you want to get to like pro level stuff, to get the size and the density and the muscle condition stay proportionate or become more proportionate is a very hard task.
Yeah.
Your off season matters a lot, and that's a lot harder than just stripping off fat is.
I'm super glad you gave that answer, because this is, as you get more experience as a coach, you learn to sort of look out for what other coaches are doing and where they're doing well, where they're not doing so well. This is something I found in the UK quite a lot. There are a lot of coaches who are quite good at getting people down to contest shape. Reasonable shape, maybe not absolutely shredded, but reasonable shape. And, it's a straightforward system. You cut calories, you find ways of enabling them to cut calories and decrease the expenditure. But what I don't see that often is good coaches who are good at putting muscle on people in the off season, because I think a lot of them, they don't really understand what hard training is. They don't understand what training to failure is, and they don't get that. And I think some coaches can be very good at shredding people down, but in terms of putting on muscle, I don't see it, because I don't know what it's like in the UK, but in America, but in the UK, a lot of coaches seem to have this absolute obsession with like bands and like just bullshit routines. And
I pay no attention to it.
Yeah, there's a lot of that which goes on, and I
Like the
tend to
JP
find
stuff.
I tend to find a lot of those guys, they don't really, yeah, JP stuff, yeah. But except I do
Yeah.
like I do like JP, but there's a lot of knockoffs. But I tend
Yeah.
to find a lot of those coaches, they're not particularly great at putting muscle on people, unless it's lots of drugs and lots of SEOs.
Yeah. I mean, just taking drugs and slamming food is not going to do it.
Right.
You know, you have to pay specific attention to. I mean, I was talking to a guy yesterday, and I was like, all right, so if you don't get your shoulder rotation back, you're screwed. You will not have any more pec detail, pec mass. Your shoulders will start to lag. Your arms will start to lag. And then because of that, everything happening there, your back will start to lag. You will never, ever get there if you don't have flexibility in your shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
Completely ignored me. Did not want to hear that at all. Because it's like, okay, you want to do PT. You're going to need to do PT. You're going to need to like lay on the ground and stretch, and you're going to have to do it almost daily. And they're like, okay, yeah, but whatever. But what about this other thing? And I'm like, you're not listening. So I've had that conversation with people a number of times. You know, same thing with TVA training. Your waist is going to suck in 3 or 4 years if you keep eating this way and you don't train your waist. It's going to suck. You know how I know? Because mine sucks, and that's what I did. Like it's my playbook. You know, I made that mistake. So a lot of that stuff, it's really tough to coach in the off season because it takes as much effort as it does in the contest season.
Yeah.
It's not easy to get really, really good at bodybuilding, you know? Yeah. As far as like the difficulties in contest prep, I think a lot of that's set up by your off season. If you're doing your off season correctly, you're going to be eating so much clean food that you get into your prep period and you're still eating lots of food, you know? Like I have Joe coming into the show in 5 weeks, and this morning he's like, it still doesn't feel like it's gotten really hard. And he's like, you know, we haven't changed the diet in 2 weeks. I'm still eating 300 grams of carbs, you know, every day, and with refeeds whenever whenever I drop another 2 pounds. He's just basically like, he said his words were, I'm excited for what it's going to be like when I feel bad. And I'm thinking, well, I don't know if it's going to, but it probably will. I mean, you're probably going to feel it in a couple weeks. You know, your body fat gets low enough, you're going to feel it. But the point was, we got him up to like 900, 1,000 grams of carbs. He was eating clean all off season. He was having treats on top of the clean food and staying lean. That makes for an easy prep. That's why he's in shape. You know, if you ignore that entire thing and show up to a coach eating 300 grams of carbs already and fat, how exactly are you going to get ripped?
One of the things that I like about your coaching, and you consistently do this really, really well. So it'd be nice to get your opinion on this. Your guys put on a lot of mass in the off season, like actual lean tissue. And I know you value training hard, and you place that really, really high on your hierarchy. So what is it that you're doing with these guys in terms of training really hard? And what are your thoughts on other coaches in terms of, you know, just basically training hard?
I don't know what anyone else is doing. I pay less and less attention to. I used to buy Jansen's plans and Mountain Dog's plans and read them through. And after a while, I was like, yeah, these are cool. And they mean nothing. Because you can't say to somebody, train intensely, right? You can't really explain it to somebody unless you see them doing it. So I tell them to take videos of them training, and then I go, wow, you just left 5 reps on the table.
Yeah.
You know,
that's
what I'm doing. And I'm looking at them. I'm going, okay, well, your form here is brutally bad. You're going way too heavy. Do this, and then send me another video. And then I go, okay, now you're doing it right, but you're leaving reps. Is that your final set? Because you're leaving reps on the table.
Yeah.
You know, so that's how I kind of pinpoint the training. I'm looking at what they're doing.
I
fix it.
I do the exact same thing. I had a client come to me recently who was with another coach previously, and he sent me a set of leg presses. And I said, how many reps did you think you had left? And he said, I probably had 2 reps left. But he clearly had like 10 reps left. Literally, Alex, it was that easy. And I said, from now on, we're not leaving any reps behind. I want you to go to what you think is failure, and I want you to push really, really hard, because I felt like I almost had to retrain this guy on how to train to failure, because his previous coach just wasn't doing that. Like he just, I'm not saying you have to go to failure, but
he ignored it.
Yeah, we ignored it. But what I wasn't saying he has to go to failure. But what I mean is, he didn't have an idea of where failure was, so he couldn't really have an idea of where 2 reps from failure was.
I've had people tell me, "Oh, that's not how Flex Wheeler trained." And I'm like, okay, well, you're not Flex Wheeler.
You're not Flex Wheeler, buddy, yeah.
Yeah. Take a look in the mirror. I mean, what do you see that's like Flex?
Yeah.
So, yeah, so training is high on the priority list, but I think also the diet has to be consistent. Well, one of the things that I do, and Ollie will tell you this, so he takes it better than some others. Some other people kind of start to grumble and gripe, but as soon as they start to get too fat, I pull them back. Yeah. And I don't want them, I don't want them remaining in that state for too long, because that's where you run into issues.
Yes.
So I pull them back, and we kind of restart. We start over, and I don't call it recomping, because I feel like when you start to tell people they're recomping, they think they're going to be recomping for like 8 weeks,
and they take their foot off the gas in the gym. I find as well.
They just think in their mind like this is some stage that they're in, and it has nothing to do with that. I'm just trying to clean up the lines, get them sensitive to food, and then we push a little harder. As far as gear goes, I've told you this before. The longer I do this, the more simple it gets. Yeah. With androgenic stuff, I'll titrate up and then take it out, and then with anabolics, I'll keep it pretty steady the whole way. And I don't use a lot of orals in the off season, almost none. Mm-hmm. So it's really coming down to I'm just monitoring, like, somewhat looking at their condition, blood glucose. I don't really take that as the end all be all, because some people's regular blood glucose is higher than others to begin with. But we do look at it, and so how much, if they need insulin, if they're using GH, if they need insulin, how much test we should be using based on those factors. But to be honest, if you're using a super physiological dose of testosterone, I mean, Aceto said this. He said it in a way that's kind of funny. Is he says if you can't grow on 600 milligrams of test, you suck at bodybuilding. And it's like, okay, that's not that much, but I kind of agree with the sentiment.
He's got a point. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with the sentiment, which is like, you should not be falling apart if you're on 600 milligrams of test.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You shouldn't be like, I need more. You should be able to like maintain whatever level of muscularity you have on that. Mm-hmm. And then so there's like just a little bit of a push above that should be able to get you to where you want to go. And if you're a world-class athlete, yeah, a lot of those guys are using 2 grams of test. That's pretty standard. But you're talking about 270, 280 pound guys.
Yeah.
A lot of the guys we're talking about are 220, 230 pounds.
Or less, yeah.
Yeah, or less. And so you're looking at, and they're telling you, oh, I'm a hard gainer. I don't respond well. All this other stuff. And it's like, I doubt it.
Yeah. I'll tell you this, Alex. Long time ago, sort of 20 years ago, I was part of the Hard Gainer forums. I was actually a writer for them, and the biggest excuse a lot of them had was genetics. But the basic thing was, and I still see them. So 20 years back, I can go back to the forum and still see the same guys who have made zero progress in that time. They don't mess with anabolics, but essentially none of them have made any kind of gains in 20 years. And it's not because of being a hard gainer. It's simply because they don't know how to train. They don't know how to eat. And I tend to find
it's also because they've told themselves they're not going to make any gains.
Absolutely, yeah. And I tend to find that even guys on anabolics still give themselves that excuse to kind of fall back on. And then, but I just don't see that the training and the diet is the fundamental part of it. And the longer I'm doing this, when I realize that that's really what needs to be in place. And I think
I've had a lot of people tell me that.
Yeah, it's the same situation going back to those forums. It's the mentality and the fact they just don't know what they're doing. And it's a big thing.
I've had a lot of people tell me that I seem to grow people in the off season, and honestly, I don't really know what I'm doing different from anybody else.
You guys train hard. That's what you're doing.
I guess.
Yeah, which is I get that because I see it, and that's what I do with my guys, and I will point out if one of my guys is like wussing out in his training. So if I've got somebody who's got good bodybuilding goals, he wants to achieve something, he wants to put on like 10 pounds of muscle. And I've put on 10 pounds of muscle on natural clients in a year before. And that's a lot of muscle for a natural guy. Yeah. So, in terms of training hard, it's got to be done. So I know what I'm looking for. But then I look across at other coaches and I see, well, there's a huge emphasis on drugs, huge emphasis on SEOs. Their guys don't look like they're training particularly hard at all. That's a problem.
Yep. That's not bodybuilding.
Yeah, it's not bodybuilding. Exactly. It's not bodybuilding. Awesome. So I think we can both agree that potentially off season is a little bit more challenging. I think gaining lean tissue
Yeah,
is
at
a
a
lot
certain
harder.
point. At a certain
At a
point,
certain point.
development is definitely harder.
Yeah, definitely. Let's move on to the next one, because I find I've got a couple of things to say about this, because I've had a couple of problem clients this year. What do you consider a problem client?
These are always my favorite ones.
Yeah, they always make for a good story.
I always have good stories. I don't know if I'm going to tell any specific story. I might if I think of one, but I think the toughest ones are people that are looking for advice from everyone.
Yeah.
And they're not emotionally healthy, and because they're always having up and downs, doubts, concerns, and then also like they're asking somebody how they look, and they say, great, because everyone says great. And then they go, okay, well, what should I be doing different? And they go, oh, all of these things. And they give them 10 things. Well, if you look great, why are you telling them to do 10 different things? And then they come back and say, they don't say, I talked to so-and-so and they think I should do this. What they say is, do you think that I should be doing this, this, and this? And I know immediately they've talked to somebody, because no, I don't think that. Why would I think that?
Yeah, exactly. Right? Just follow the goddamn plan.
It doesn't mean that this other person's way is wrong. It just means it's not the way I do it.
Yeah.
You want to take a different approach and you don't like my approach anymore. I completely get that. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, it's different methods.
Say, I think I need to take a different approach. I go, God bless you.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's absolutely, you're right.
I mean, listen, if you're trying to bake a cake, you don't take the instructions for a cupcake and say, should I be doing this? You just bake the goddamn cake with the instructions. So it's not that it's wrong. It's just it's a completely different thing. You can't mix them up.
I try to look at those questions objectively and see, like, yeah, maybe that would be a good way of going about it. But when it comes to me, like, kind of dishonestly, and I can tell that it's been like planted.
Yeah.
Then I start to think that person has a problem with what we're doing. He has a problem with, talking to me honestly about it. And the worst thing about it is a lot of these guys say, I trust you, you're the best, all this stuff. And I don't want to hear any of that shit. I want to hear what you really feel. I feel I'm behind. People tell me that all the time. I feel I'm behind. And I go, okay, maybe you are, maybe you're not. Let's look at it. Let's see what we can do. Or they'll tell me, I had a guy tell me, I think we're ahead. I'm worried about, burning out. And I go, okay, let's look at this, because burnouts happened. I've experienced quite a bit of burnout now, where I see people lose steam or get sick. Just happened with Chainsaw this year. He got pneumonia 3 weeks out. He unfortunately for Chainsaw, he doesn't have any other gears other than brap. That's the gear. So it's like, okay, rip through it. And I was like, I don't know. How are you feeling? And he's like, fucking, I'm standing up. I'm good. So, but some people are vocal. Most people are not vocal about those things. And they'll just kind of come to you with other people's ideas. And you go, I don't know. Hey, do you think we should turn Clan up to 120 micrograms? No, I fucking don't.
Yeah.
No, I really don't. Hey, what do you think about DMP? I think it'll burn a lot of fat. What do you want me to tell you? Like, do I think it's a good idea? No, because it's not on your plan. I would have put it there if I thought it was a good idea. So those are the worst. Other than that, just circling back to miscommunication and lying about stuff is there's just no place for it in the relationship. You should be able to just tell people what you're doing. Like, I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to fix the holes. Yeah. So, but that's kind of a short subject. I have a long list of stories that I could tell you about bad clients, but I don't really. I think that what I consider a problem client are the ones that is dishonesty.
Yeah, that could be a podcast in itself. I'll share with you.
I have to write it down though.
I'll share with you an example of my own from this year. This is a little bit different, but it was a disappointment for me because so I took on the client probably 18 months ago, and he was your typical skinny fat, very little muscle on him, had a belly on him, to look distinctly unimpressive. Didn't know how to train, didn't know how to eat, didn't really do anything. Took him from that to then being this, jacked, abs year round, big guy, put on a lot of muscle, all that kind of stuff. And he was a client who I took him on at a fairly low rate. And I think this was actually part of the problem. I don't think he actually appreciated the information that I was giving him. And he consistently undervalued it. And it got to the point where he was sort of, he would call me and text me a lot, far more than any other client, who's paying the least and taking the most of my time. And then he was just really taking the piss with just how much he wasn't really appreciating the service, and he's constantly moaning about money, even though he's paying the least of all my clients. And so I think he didn't really get it. And so in the end, I actually let him go, and I said, look, I'm going to end our coach-client relationship because I just don't think you're really appreciating what's this. You're constantly moaning about money. You're constantly late with money. And it came through in the conversation that he still didn't actually realize the value of what I'd given to him.
Right.
And that was personally very disappointing because I put a lot of time into this client, and he, we were friends in as much as you can be friends with your client of that sort of time, who puts that level of strain on you. So it was personally quite a big disappointment for me because I thought I've given this guy so much, and in the end he still doesn't see it.
Yeah.
And so that was personally quite a disappointment. And he left, and he said, I didn't mean any disrespect or anything like that. I thought, well, you know what? At this point, the damage is done. I don't really want to speak to him again. But that was a personal disappointment because I transformed him from just looking like your average gym rat to wherever he went, he was the center of attention.
I have a few of those,
and that really sucked for me. Yeah,
I have a few of those. I have one of the first clients I ever had that kind of put me on the map when we were on the GH15 forum. Was a guy that I met. I walked into the gym and he was training with these two old guys, and he was going all out. Like he was looking like Franco Colombo on the floor, just doing rows off the floor with the cables and just going hard. And they'd be doing like full splits before their workouts and stuff. Like they were old school.
Yeah.
And I saw this kid. He stood up. He turned around, and I was like, oh, he can compete. He can do really well. So I went over to him, and I was like fat as shit at the time. And I just walked over to him. I was like, hey, you should be competing. You need like 1 year. And he was like, okay, fat guy. And and so I like walked to my car, and I was like, wow, I just didn't really realize what that must have looked like to him.
Yeah.
So
sure.
I went home. Like at the time, I didn't have Instagram or anything. It was like 10 years ago. I didn't have Instagram or anything. So I just went home and I grabbed my Polaroids of my contest, and I went back and waited for him because I lived like 2 minutes away from the gym at the time. And he came out, and I was like, and I handed it to him, and he was like, who's this? And I was like, that's me. And I was your age.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh shit. And all of a sudden he's looking at me, and I'm like, that's you next year. And he's like, oh shit. And I'm like, what do you think? And he's like, what time do you train? I'm like, what time do you train? So the whole next year, long story short, he went from Calvin Klein looking model to light heavyweight champion.
Yeah.
And, and I never charged him a penny. I just told him what to do, and he would eat at my house, and I would, everything. I just took care of the guy. We became really good friends. And then after the second show, he just kind of ghosted me, and I had moved away. So I was like a half hour away. For like a little while. He'd come and see me, but then he just stopped. And then he was just kind of being rude. And I was like, all right, I don't get it. And once in a while, I'll see him show up to a show looking no better than he ever did then.
Yeah.
And being really pissed off when he gets second, and just kind of storming out the back of the building. That's what happened the last time I saw him. And I actually texted him all the pictures I took of him because I thought he looked pretty good. I was like, oh, you look pretty good, man. Like, here's your pictures. He didn't even answer. I was just like, this piece of shit,
Yeah.
So that was one. And then the other one was much more recently, a couple of years ago, that's on the tip of my mind, was a client near you. And I saw him on the forums, and I was like, you should be competing. I hit him in the DMs, and I wasn't even trying to like coach him. I was just like, you need to get your shit serious and start competing. You have the goods.
Okay.
And he was like, okay, would you coach me? And I was like, sure. Here's my rates. He's like, I have no money. And I was like, all right, you know what? I'm going to do this for you just to show you can do it. It was stupid because he was sponsored for gear. So he got all his gear free. Okay. Lived with his mother, and, she paid for his food. And anyway, he got on stage, did really well, still competes, all this stuff. And then as soon as years later, when he was like financially stable, 2 years after coaching him, I was like, okay, it's not fair for me to continue not charging you and be charging other people.
Yeah.
I did this because I saw the potential in you, and I still do, and I think I can bring you really far. And he was like, I'll let you know. And then that was the end of it. And then he went and hired some other coach like a year later.
Yeah.
And it was just like, like you said, it was like he never would have gotten on stage. Maybe he would have, but he wouldn't have done it when he did.
Yeah.
He wouldn't have gotten as far as he did, and he wouldn't have been as far along if he didn't, take the coaching and then just didn't value it because he wasn't paying for it.
Yes.
Yeah. It's just, it was stupid. It was like, I shouldn't be making that mistake. So I try not to make it anymore. And the funny thing is that other people will come to me who have always paid me and say, I don't have any, I'm really short on money. I got a lot of expenses right now. I have to suspend coaching. And I'll like literally tell them, I don't care. Pay me whenever you can. Don't worry about it. And they're like, no, I can't do that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, really, I don't want you to fall behind. I want you to continue making progress. Like, just keep going.
Yeah, I had one of those today. He's actually an ex-colleague of mine, and he wanted a plan, and he said, "Can he sort of split the payments?" And I was like, "Fine, it's fine. I'll give you whatever you need. Just pay me when you can. It's not
yeah, exactly. It's like, for people like that, I feel like at some point it's gonna what goes around comes around. It's like a karma thing. So
I think so. I think for him, I don't think he realized what he was getting. And it's a shame, but I probably shouldn't be as emotionally involved as I am, but you do tend to be as a coach because that's part of your job.
Yeah, I think that's actually something we should talk. I don't know if there's a question in here about that, but the emotional involvement, like the perk side of it, is this a good time for that? I don't know.
Yeah, we can do that. What I was going to suggest was actually because we've been on for an hour and we're only halfway through the questions. So I think if we cover this part and then perhaps do a part 2 next week to get all the rest. So let's finish with a nice segment about this emotional aspect, and we'll do the rest later.
Okay, what are we at here?
So you were going to talk about sort of the emotional aspect of sort of investing in your client and the difficulties.
Yeah. So. Yeah, that's actually when I reached out to you about this one. That was the reason I was reaching out to you to do this podcast. Was I've been thinking a lot about that recently, which is like, what is it to be a coach, right? And is it purely to get the results when they tell you, here's my goals, and you're going to drive for those goals and get those results, or is there more of a responsibility to their emotional and mental health?
Yeah.
And something I've come into contact with much more often now that I've been paying more attention to people, in the last few years as individuals. For a while, it was like I'd have friendships and stuff, but I was really hard driving and tough on people.
Yeah.
But recently, I've seen people have some pretty difficult life experiences and things come up, and it starts to the question in my mind is my role better served to help them emotionally handle or mentally handle the problems they're having through their food, through their diet, through their things, as much or more than it is just to get results. And I get really, really invested in people on a personal level. I wouldn't call it necessarily a friendship because it can overlap with a friendship, but a lot of times it's just, I want to be of value to them.
It's almost a mentor type of role, a life coach.
Yeah. And I never thought I'd be a life coach.
No, neither did I. It's weird.
It's not what I'm setting out to do here. But I find myself more and more, and in my own personal life of late, I find myself searching for, how do I put it? Searching for a more personal relationship with myself and being more in tune with myself and emotional health and all of that stuff, which in the past I've been pretty negligent of, or at least I've just been like kind of a glutton for punishment and not really pay attention to my own happiness. Yeah. So I started doing that for myself. And then I started thinking about my clients more, like, is this, like, I've seen people at shows being miserable, and I'm thinking, is this the right thing for them? Yeah. Am I even helping them, or am I hurting them? And so that all kind of comes around into like, post-show, why they disappear, why it's stressful, all that stuff. So I've started really thinking about how I can make the experience a positive one all the way through, so that they leave thinking, wow, I achieved something, rather than, wow, I fucking got through that. Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of an important distinction, right?
I believe so. I think so, due to the type of clients that I work with, and also probably due to my own working background as well, I've come to those crossroads a lot quicker, because I found myself over the course of as I've grown as a coach, I do become a lot more invested into the client's lifestyle. So you sort of gave the example previously of if you're going to go away on a cruise, etc., just don't fucking tell me about it. Stick to the plan. Okay,
Right.
that kind of stuff I agree with. But I think if it's a case of, look, I'm going to have to go off plan because something's happened, or I'm finding it difficult to stick to the plan because of X, Y, and Z circumstances, I do try and work with the client as much as possible now, and I end up looking at life factors and how things kind of go take part into the how we can actually let them stick to the plan rather than just saying stick to the fucking plan. And I think that's probably the hardest part of my job, I would say.
So, like, I realize that there's an absolute contradiction in those two things, right? Telling somebody, I don't care where you're going, just stick to the plan, versus caring about their emotional health.
Yes.
I think I need to make the clarification here that in the previous example, it's a personality type of somebody who's not trying.
Yeah.
Right. So
yes.
For me to get them to try is to show no deference for them wanting to do these other things. Mm-hmm. It's to kind of point out to them that they were the ones who stated the goal and they're not trying. They're not working towards it.
I think in that circumstance it's more self-inflicted, whereas I think what we're talking about now is it's more a case of things outside their control are making things difficult for them to stick to the plan, and are you trying to work with them to enable them to do so? Is that right?
Yeah, that, but also, like, let's say you get somebody that sticks to the plan, is getting results, but they're vastly unhappy.
Yes.
They're unhappy because it's taking away from their personal time with their family, or it's taking away from their ability to sit down and read at night, and because that's what they prefer to be doing than starving and meal prepping. Yeah. It's pulling away from things they could be doing with their loved ones. Yeah. And it's hurting them. Right.
100%. Yeah, definitely.
So and people always talk about it, what you're willing to sacrifice, and all of that stuff. Right. And you look at it as like some sort of badge of honor, but for the most part, people that are doing this are not doing it for money, and they're doing it for their own satisfaction. And if that's how they feel about it, then it's, something has to change.
Yes.
If they're going to sustain continuing to do it. So that's kind of what I've looked at. That's kind of where I've, maybe I talk to people a lot more about things to do with their meditation, or with their time, with their, time management, with their, the way they food prep in order to get things done faster. Just kind of plan your life out a little bit differently, and look at it from a different point of view. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it's not always, easy to do.
I'm in the middle of a prep with one client at the moment, and it's been a particularly trying prep for him due to circumstances outside of his control. So as much as I want to say stick to the goddamn plan, a lot of it has been outside of his control. So I've been working with him quite a lot to enable him to still be on track, because he wants to do it. It's just external circumstances are making it very troublesome. And that's really the type of thing that I find I'm having to do a lot more of. And to be honest though, Alex, I think that's part of being a good coach. I really do. Because that's not just saying, well, here are the fucking numbers, stick to them. You're actually helping them to stick to the numbers. And I think that's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm just like kind of focused on people's happiness.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
it's kind of where I'm at at the moment, because it's really tough to start to care about somebody's well-being and then see that they're unhappy with it.
Yes. And I think you have to strike the right balance, because ultimately they're also going to be happy with the end result as well. So you've got to strike that balance. But it's really a big part of it. I've been talking this with my brother, my older brother, and just been telling him a lot of it is very life coach-esque. And I never really thought I'd be doing that. And but I find it fascinating. And a lot of times people then end up seeing you as more of a mentor type rather than just, hey, he's my nutrition coach. It's much more than that.
I mean, I've been working a lot more on in my printing business that I was telling you about, because we're expanding and taking on partnerships, and there's a lot of new people, and most of them are younger than me. I'm actually the oldest out of the group of people. So there's a bunch of 30-somethings and me, the elderly 40-year-old, venturing into this space together. And I've been like really focused on leadership role and how to get people to perform at their best. and it's something I've never done before.
Mm.
So I've never really thought of myself as a mentor or a leader of a life coach or any of that. So, but as I've been working on that, it's been kind of coming into the coaching aspect. So I think just naturally it starts to blend in.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. It's definitely an interesting sort of challenge. I think one of the earliest examples I had of that was he won't mind me saying this, but my client Mark, we had a particularly challenging year, and it was a year that we put on the most amount of muscle on him. So he'd been training since he was 18, and he was like 26 at the time, and we managed to slap on 12 pounds of stage weight onto him in 1 year, and he's natural. Like, it was a brilliant year. And I did say on the transformation that, look, this is not normal. Like, this isn't normal progress. I don't expect this to happen. But it happened specifically because he'd been underfeeding himself for a long period of time. His training wasn't particularly great, but he had good potential. So I slapped on a lot of stage weight. We put on, I think in total it was probably about 30 actual pounds, and stripped off it was about 12 pounds of stage weight. But that was a tremendous year. But psychologically, it was very, very difficult for him, very challenging. And I was, at the time, I was just like, dude, this is what needs to be done. Let's get it done. And he was great. Like, he was like, okay, I'll do it. But it definitely put a strain on him. And afterwards, he came off the other side. And for a long period of time, he just was really put off a lot of training. So he was training 3 times a week. He was still with me. He did actually leave for a short period of time. Then he came back, and he's still with me now. But with his approach now, I take his psychological and mental state, and also his responsibilities at home, a lot more serious, because I know that's going to affect him in the future. And I think he's a really good example of that.
Yeah. I have a lot of that with Chris with Chainsaw.
Yeah.
We had a really good year for putting on mass again, and he did it with a short off season because of injury. But now it's like, to get him to the pro level from where he is now is with another baby on the way, and just working the way he works is like 26 days, 27 days a month. It's going to take perfect programming, execution, and the right amount of rest for him to be able to do that. So it's like the managing of all that and him being happy with it, because maybe there's a point where he's like, this isn't worth it. I don't think that's going to happen this year because he's really good and he's that close, but there's going to be a point sometime probably when he's like, it's too much. Like, it's a lot of strain. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of money,
Yeah, sure.
So, yep, for sure. So do you want to stop here?
I was going to say we stop here. We've actually got an additional 5 questions, but I think we've had a good long hour of this. So what we'll do is we'll pick it up probably next weekend if you're free, and we'll put this out
Sounds
now.
Good.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, sounds good
right. Alex, thank you very much for that. I'm going to stop the recording. So thank you all for tuning in. Leave us some good reviews on iTunes, by the way. I need some reviews there, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.